What is up, everybody? Welcome on into the second playoff reveal reaction show of Warchant.com. I'm Azon Hajavandi, Director of Digital Media for Warchant.com. That man over there, Managing Editor of Warchant.com, Ira Schofel. Thanks so much again for being here. We're going to react live, real time, to the playoff announcement. We got ESPN here on one of my monitors, so as soon as we know what comes down here, Ira, we will let the people know. But first, we need to let the people know that if you're not a member of Warchant.com, you've had so many opportunities to join, maybe none more advantageous than the Buck Club, but that is no longer a thing. But you can get 50% off, Ira. 50% off for an entire year. What are you folks waiting for? Ira's Insight, Corey Clark's columns, Michael Langston, Matt Lassiere got you covered in recruiting, Jeff and Tom entertaining you every single day, and Gene Williams will join us here later tonight and give his reaction in the context that only he can right here on the show. 50% off your first year. Go sign up at warchant.com. No promo code needed. It's just a big old green banner. Click it, tap it, do all that sort of stuff. Ira, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. I feel like since this is a reaction show, at some point we have to make like crazy faces for use on the thumbnails. You know, just what? I can't believe it.
What did you think about the first edition of the playoff poll, Ira? It didn't jive up to the AP poll or the coaches poll. Ohio State, rather, checked in at 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, and then Florida State 4. I was surprised. I thought Georgia was going to be 1, maybe Michigan 1. I thought Ohio State was certainly going to be at 3, but they were at number 1, I guess, because of those wins over Notre Dame, Penn State. We'll talk about just how maybe impressive or not impressive those are. But what were your initial thoughts on that first 4 that we saw last week?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping that they wouldn't just follow what the AP poll does. I mean, the whole idea of waiting till week 8 or 9 is to have a fresh opinion and not just be locked into what you've done from the course of the season and the preseason polls. So from that standpoint, I like the fact that it wasn't just Georgia at the top, just because that's what everybody else has been doing all year. On the flip side of that, though, I don't know that Ohio State would have been my number 1, and I felt like Florida State maybe deserves to be higher than number 4. I just feel like when you look at the big wins, the signature wins, all these teams have about, 6 or 7 wins that are just ho-hum, not that impressive against teams anywhere from like 3-6 to 5-4 to 6-3, just average college football teams. They all have a couple wins against good teams, I guess, other than Michigan. They really don't have that yet. But so from that standpoint, I think Florida State's wins over LSU and at Clemson stack up pretty well, maybe even better than some of those. So wasn't thrilled to be number 4, but if that's the case, we might be even more disappointed right now because there's chatter that, there's concern that Florida State may fall to number 5, which seems ridiculous, but might be par for the course.
Who's been doing the chatter? I haven't seen that.
A couple of early On3 ran a CBS's predictions. They've got now Washington up to number 4 and Florida State number 5. Again, whether that's valid or not, it's something out there in the ether. If somebody at least thinks that.
Okay. I don't agree with that if that were to happen. And I'm Mr. Pac-12 here on the program, but I certainly will not, I will not subscribe to that there. Let's see. Is there anything going on here in the chat? You guys can post your comments. We'll pop them up, discuss them. That's what we like to do here. Gator Kirk thinks, he's subversive here. Just clickbait. Lots of football to be played.
Well, I mean, that's what we're doing at this time of year, right? We're just all kind of speculating because the reality is, a lot of this is going to take care of itself, right? I mean, what happens in the Big Ten is going to be sorted out on the field. Washington's still got some tough games left too, right?
Yeah, that's, I'm trying to create this graphic, which I don't know if it's going to make it up in time by the time they reveal the poll, which now they're starting off at 25 here. So Kansas State 25, North Carolina 24, Tulane 23rd, Iowa 22nd, Arizona 21st. But to your point about Washington's schedule, Florida State wins out, takes care of business. They're going to be okay. But once the dust settles, they might have the weakest resume, ironically enough. They schedule the SEC team on a neutral site, but they might end up having like the lesser resume out of all the other teams kind of around them. Georgia's going to really start picking up their strength of schedule here in these next few weeks. They got Ole Miss at home. They're number 10 in the country. You got to go at Tennessee. That's number 17. Ohio State obviously has to go to Michigan. Michigan's going to Penn State this weekend, and then they host Ohio State. Washington's got a couple more ranked teams left on their slate too. So
Washington still has Utah and Oregon State are both in the top 20. Yeah. I get it. I guess that's what I would say. Right now, I think Florida State has as good or as better resume building wins than pretty much all those other schools. Probably right there with, I don't know, Ohio State, but we'll have to see whether or not Notre Dame really is that significant a win. That was an ugly game, 17-14. Certainly didn't get any style points. Their only other winning is against Penn State, who also doesn't have a lot of impressive wins. So we'll see there. But yeah, I think to your point, Florida State should have gotten bonus points late in the year for wins over Florida and Miami, assuming they get those. But neither of those teams. I mean, if Florida State beats Miami this week, that'll be their fourth loss. Florida's already got 3 or 4 losses.
4.
And if you hand them a loss, they're going to look at it like a 500 team. So, yeah, the problem for Florida State is they're not going to pick up any more style points really the rest of the way.
Notre Dame has dropped 5 spots to 20th. LSU has also dropped 5 spots. They are 19th. So that's where Florida State is right now. But on the horizon, if everything goes according to plan, you would play Louisville, who now just checked in at number 11 in this top 25. They are 11th. Oregon State moved up 4 spots to 12. Tennessee now 13th. They've moved up 4 spots. So that's 2 weeks from now for Georgia. Missouri dropped 2 spots to 14 after their loss in Athens between the hedges. And Oklahoma State skyrocketing up the charts, 7 spots up to 15. So that's where things are going as we're just outside the top 10 here on the College Football Playoff Reveal Show on Warchant.com. Hit that thumbs up, everybody. We certainly would appreciate it. And a reminder, if you're just checking in here with us, it is the big game special because Florida State's got a big game this weekend. They're playing Miami. 50% off an annual subscription over at warchant.com. Take advantage. I think it probably runs through the celebration of throttling Miami into early Sunday morning, but take advantage of it now, everybody. Get those extra days of coverage from Ira and Corey and everybody over at warchant.com. The big game special, 50% off an annual subscription. No promo code needed. Just go to the site. You'll find it.
We're into the top 10.
We are. Penn State checks in at number 10. They're up 1 single spot. That will be Michigan's challenge this weekend. They'll be heading to Happy Valley to take on Penn State. They're 8-1. Their lone loss to Ohio State, 20-12. I think that was an ugly one.
Yeah. The thing is, and I know this can all be so self-serving. Like on the one hand, I look at Tennessee at 12 or 13, and I'm like, I don't know, man. That's a pretty fraudulent top 12 or 13 team. But I don't know. Is Louisville that much better than them? So Florida State's going to get, if they play Louisville, they'll get credit for that win, just like Georgia would for beating Tennessee.
Let's see what we got here. I thought my screen was focused. They must be going all in on Penn State. I see some motion in the graphic, but they're on number 10 when it comes to Penn State. I finally got my graphic ready to go. It's going to probably take a minute or two for it to fully upload here. Oh, wow.
Number 9 is Ole Miss.
We're at number 9. Oh, my guy Lane going in between the hedges. That's going to probably boost Georgia's resume. I don't think
if they get that win, I mean, that's going to be a good game, right?
I don't know. I don't think so, man. No,
really.
I think it's a bad matchup for Lane. I think that defense will smother them, and their offense won't be able to. I think Georgia's offense will do enough against that porous Ole Miss team, and Ole Miss just defensively not that great.
We'll see.
But yeah, they both moved up the spot. Wow, you must be ahead of me. You can feel free to do the reveal, Ira, since it looks
Crimson Tide at number 8. Alabama Crimson Tide creeping back up there, creeping in contention. If any of these undefeateds lose, I mean, Alabama might end up being the top number one loss team based on the way they've been playing when it's all said and done. But yeah, they're up to number 8.
That big win over LSU. I think everybody obviously needs to root for LSU the rest of the way out. Needed the win over Alabama would have been huge, but didn't obviously materialize there. But I think LSU game, just that week 1, it's just so far out of everyone's kind of consciousness, unfortunately, for Florida State. But they shouldn't get penalized for booking them that early in the slate.
And again, when you played them, they were number 5 in the country. Clemson went into kind of a funk after you played them. I mean, if Clemson got to a tough start, but I think, you won at Clemson. I think that was a significant win. Clemson then found a way to lose a couple other games that they dominated. So that loses luster, but I still think at the time, you won at a top 15 team. Texas checks in at number 7, Aslan. Longhorns.
Yeah. So it looks like that we're probably going to kind of somewhat hold serve here. Oklahoma obviously getting upset in Bedlam last week, and that was really the only shakeup in the top 10. So that's going to kind of create some room for a team like Texas to position themselves. Actually, I think Alabama and Ole Miss are the ones that are really going to benefit. I think Texas actually was, if I'm not mistaken, number 7 last week. But yeah, Texas, we'll see how they look. Malik Murphy did not look all that sharp last week in the game against Kansas State. There was some murmuring, some talk out there that possibly Arch Manning might get a look-see if Malik Murphy can't be better with the football, but also Quinn Ewers has been kind of promoted, elevated to day-to-day. I think he had an AC joint sprain, but he was throwing here this past day. They got TCU, if I'm not mistaken, this weekend. So the Longhorns checking in at 7.
And they still they still play Oklahoma State too. Is that correct?
Let me pull up my I don't think I have the Big 12 helmet schedules here in front of me. I do not have the Big 12 schedule ahead of me. Gotcha. That sounds about right, because I think because they don't do round robin any longer. I was about to say they would do it because of the round robin way of the Big 12, but now that they have UCF and everybody in there, that's not a for certain thing. But I'll pull up their schedule right here.
Or maybe
they've got Iowa State and Texas Tech. So they got TCU this weekend, then they've got to go to Iowa State, and then they close out at home versus Texas Tech. So yeah, no real other signature wins on the horizon there for Texas. And I don't even know if they would at this point. I don't think they would rematch Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. I think it would actually be Oklahoma State that's got.
So that's where they would get Oklahoma State is in the championship game. Yeah. So we'll see if they could survive that.
Top 6 will be revealed here shortly. I think that's going to hold serve. I cannot imagine Florida State would get jumped by Washington. I'm not going to lose my mind over, but I would not be all that excited. But I still think it's probably going to be Oregon, Washington, and then we'll go Florida State.
Oregon at number 6.
Are they? All right. So there we go. The number one-loss team in the country. They lost to Washington, but it was in Husky Stadium, and everyone seemingly thinks that Oregon is a more complete team, seems to play both sides of the football a little bit more sound than Washington, who defensively maybe not all that stout and had some kind of ugly wins against Arizona and Arizona State and Stanford. They had, they limped the last, 4 of the last 3 weeks. I'm going to give them credit for the win against USC. I know that USC defense is nothing impressive at all, but Caleb Williams on offense is always going to give you a little bit of a scare. So the fact they were able to go into the Coliseum and get that win, I still think is worth tipping your cap to. But yeah, they got the bracket up, and as you said, Ira, Oregon checking in at number 6.
And we're going to have to save our outrage for another week, Aslan. You're not going to get my outrage. Washington. Got the Huskies at number 5.
There we go. Washington, number 5. Inside track of the Pac-12 championship game where things hold serve. They would then play again Oregon, who is, as you see, everybody know, is number 6 here in the country. Remaining schedule for Washington, as Ira pointed out again, they've got Utah this week, then Oregon State, and then the Apple Cup at home to close things out against Washington State to close out their slate.
And we got the Noles, still number 4.
Florida State, number 4. This is going to be pretty cool. We can probably use the same graphic from last week, I would imagine. But
Michigan, number 4. Michigan, number 3.
Yep, that's what it was last week as well. So
you think the only drama is Georgia or Ohio State?
I could see Georgia jumping them, but it's only one ranked win, and Ohio State's got 2. So I'd be a little bit mildly surprised if it were to work out that way. But yeah, Florida State 4.
But also, but going back to the earlier comment, or Gator Kirk's earlier comment that's for TV, I feel like you got to jumble something up. You got to give people a reason to keep watching from week to week. If you just go back with the same order every week, then people are going to get bored with it.
B Sizzle, has an undefeated Power 5 champ ever been left out of the playoff? No. And apparently a 1-loss Power 5 champ has never been left out of the playoff either. I saw that somewhere. But yeah, undefeated Power 5 champ has not been left out. So remember, Michigan and Ohio State are both ahead of Florida State. They're going to play each other. So one of them is going to drop and fall behind Florida State after said loss. So,
and they're standing pat. Ohio State number 1, Georgia number 2.
All right, there we go. So there's their boom. Look at that recycled. Almost had it ready for you folks. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. If the season ended right now, that's a team I would want to play if I was Florida State. I would want to play Ohio State.
The Washington thing would have pissed me off just because, man, that USC team is not impressive. They're kind of in a tailspin. How would that win have been enough to push you over when Florida State would get penalized for winning a game on the road with 5 wide receivers out? Looks like Gene has arrived.
Yeah, let's get Gene on in here, the founder and administrator of Warchant.com, joining us here live on the playoff reaction show. Hit the thumbs up, everybody. We certainly would appreciate it. Gene's seen these polls. It's been a while, obviously, since Florida State's been in the thick of all this, but things holding steady for Florida State, remaining undefeated, remaining at number 4, standing pat. Gene, your thoughts on the second revelation here of the college football playoff poll in 2023?
Well, I was bummed I had to put away my soapbox, man. I had it all warmed up. I was going to come up here. I was just like, I was so angry because you saw that CBS poll earlier where they had Washington pick number 4, and I had all my arguments ready to go to blast the committee. Darn it. No drama. What's up with this? And I know Gator Kirk made that comment earlier. I figured for sure they're going to do something to shake it up. I mean, what excitement is this? So, but we'll keep tuning in every week just to see what they're going to do. But, I think, you made the point too about what bothered me. What was my biggest thing was going to be to bother me that they played a USC team, it was relatively obviously back and forth close to the end. It is not a good USC team, but they've got the number 1 draft pick on the team. They got name recognition. There's another team that had a close game against Florida State that they were penalized for playing, and that's Boston College, another 3-loss team. But for some reason, everybody's forgot that that was such a bad game by Florida State. Well, BC's actually pretty darn good now. So, you got to look at stuff like that. And I'm still mad at the whole thing. I would have gone off too on Washington. That Arizona State game, you cannot discount that. They did not score an offensive touchdown. They were losing to Arizona State. I looked at one of the power rankings. Arizona State's in the hundreds. I mean, it's a 2-win team. That is a really bad team to roll in to Washington. But I've not heard them mention that once on any of these shows. Nobody brings that up. That was a horrible performance by them. They should have lost to a really bad team. But as things stand, I guess more or less they got it right. FSU's in control of their own destiny. Even if they were 5, I was still going to try to, put it out there. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You win your games, you're in. I don't see any scenario where they could possibly, Florida State's undefeated, wins the ACC. Especially, it was good to see Louisville up to number 11. And I think that's justifiable. I don't know if you guys talked about that, but I think that's justifiable. And I think if they win out, I mean, what are they going to be? 7, 6, 7, something like that. If they keep winning their games in that ACC championship game, that's going to look a hell of a lot better than whoever Ohio State, Michigan plays in the Big Ten championship. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, that's the thing. I think the fear that some Florida State fans have, and part of it is, some of it is the team's 9-0. You got to figure out something to kind of worry about. People have to figure out something to be concerned about. So I think there's a fear that, if Ohio State and Michigan play to basically a 1-point game, or just basically it could go either way, and and one of them wins by basically 1 point or 2 points, or Alabama continues to look good and steamrolls Georgia or something crazy like that, could they get vaulted by a 1-loss team and left out? Especially if they don't look good in these last few games, where Florida and Miami are both going to end up with maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 losses. That's the doomsday scenario, but I'm with you. I just don't think there's any scenario where that's going to happen, where Florida State would get passed by a one-loss team.
And undefeated. I mean, an undefeated and all those scenarios are the one thing about those, no matter what it is. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, you're putting in a team that's not going to be, I guess, they wouldn't be a conference champ for one. So You're putting them in over an undefeated conference champ, a 1-loss non-conference champ at a Power 5. It just doesn't add up. Now, I guess the scenario where Alabama beats Georgia, and that we've seen them do that before and get in. But again, it would be bizarre. I think the outrage would be so huge. I don't think they would do it. I don't think the committee has the balls to screw over FSU to help Alabama. And I know they've done Alabama favors in the past getting them in playoffs in scenarios like this. I can't see that happening though. So I think it's okay. But, there's that really there's like that 1% chance where you're a little bit worried that could happen.
Don't dare them. That felt like a dare. That felt like an open dare, Gene.
Do it, committee. I want to see you. No, I don't want to see him do that. That would be awful. I think we'd go the UCF route, Ira, right, and still claim the national championship.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, like, if Florida State had no good wins, then maybe. But Florida State's got some good wins. I mean, again, I still think
plural though, Ira. I don't know if nationwide people feel the Duke win is all that great or the Clemson win is all that great.
Well, how about Notre Dame believes it?
Ohio State's going to have to buy into that if they want to hang on to the Notre Dame thing. But if Michigan beats them, that kind of, renders that point moot. It's just at this point right now, Georgia and Alabama, if they're on a collision course, Georgia's going to have wins over Ole Miss, Tennessee. Both those teams are ranked in the top 15. And if they were to lose like a one possession game against Alabama and they'd won 28 out of their last 29 games, I mean, there's a possibility they could put both those teams in. I don't think I'd agree with it over an undefeated Power 5 champion. But again, Florida State's not going to have any kind of signature win for the last 8 weeks. So that might be that kind of door that opens ajar.
Well, here's one thing I would say. Mike Norvell likes to talk about control what you can control. Beat the crap out of Miami and Florida. Get some style points. Don't muddle your way through. And just kind of, again, you can't always control that, but if you can win in convincing fashion, there's motivation to do that, because again, that just strengthens your case if you're just dismantling teams. Because look, the only reason Michigan looks good, it's not because of who they've beaten, it's because they've just destroyed these teams. They destroyed Nebraska, they destroyed Minnesota. So
it's reputation. It's reputation. They've been in the playoff the last 2 years, so it's their brand and the reputation.
But it's also the fact that they thrashed a bunch of these teams. That matters. I mean, I think that matters. If Florida State needs to look good in winning these games.
Yeah, I guess that would be the scenario you worry about if they look bad and they muddle through and they somehow get it, and you maybe open the door for something crazy to happen at the end. So I would be that. But it sounded like, Aslan, you were auditioning for the SEC network there, and I know you're playing the devil's advocate of all this SEC. It's like I got annoyed on there. Like, I forget, one of the commentators was like, when they put Missouri's ranking up and they dropped, like, they shouldn't have dropped at all. They played Georgia. It's that quality loss thing in the SEC drives me bananas. So it's just the same thing. Well, you played all these SEC teams, so you must be great. Drives me nuts. I'm sorry. I mean, we're not big on the ACC, but I mean, there's some decent teams in there. Duke's decent. BC's obviously decent. You're not going to get credit for those games, but those are, Miami. Again, it's unfortunate that, it's unfortunate that Miami's suddenly decided to go on their skid. They took a couple more weeks. They did it later than they usually do, but it looks like they're in their typical late season skid. So the game may not mean a whole lot, but yeah, if you go out and my nightmare is not nightmare, you lose, but you lose, you win 23-21 or something, and it looks sloppy, and people go, that's a horrible Miami team, and suddenly, it opens the door for the conversation. That's a thing to worry about.
I don't know if Alabama has the resume this year. I mean, they've got wins over Ole Miss and Tennessee, and if they were to beat Georgia, they win the conference, but they still have that one loss. But it'd be really hard to imagine them leaving an SEC champion out. But yeah, they do not have it hasn't been the murderer's row as it usually has been in the SEC. But at the same time, and the ACC has just been so down. I mean, there's a vacuum here that's been filled by one team for the last 15 years. I've been Florida State or Clemson. Now it's Florida State again. But I guess if Louisville can win out, that gives you that one last sort of big moment like that. That's the style point victory.
Right.
That would
be
top 8. Yeah.
Yeah, and when Gene mentioned the quality SEC loss, I got shivers down my neck. But I will say this: in a couple of years, if we're over there, we're going to have to destroy these tapes. We're going to have to, because we're going to love the quality SEC loss at that point. We're going to be all about the quality SEC loss.
Shout out to our guy Don Rorick, $50 in the jar, totally not necessary, but totally appreciated. And speaking of 50, again, 50% off an annual membership over at warchant.com this week. It's the big game special. Take advantage of that. Thanks so much, Don. We appreciate the heck out of you, man. He's always commenting on all the videos, always stirring up here on YouTube. We appreciate it.
Don.
Thanks to Robbie Peppers, $10 in the jar as well. There we go. I think we have the team with the most focus. Only way we lose is if we beat ourselves. Go Noles. I don't know if a lot of teams can say that, Gene, but that's pretty darn accurate, I feel like, here as we're moving into November.
Yeah, you look at the remaining slate. It's sure, again, a few weeks ago, I was really worried about Miami, the way they played. Obviously, even the losing to North Carolina and Clemson, I thought, man, they're catching their stride. But Van Dyke looks like a shell of him, former self. He looks awful. And then Florida, you thought, they're at least you go at home, they're really good. They're going to be tough to beat down in the swamp. And then after what I saw last week against Arkansas, it looks like they're kind of cashing it in too, and seem to have some key injuries hurting them as well. So I think you're right. I think FSU. It's hard to imagine. Now, I still don't really know how good Louisville is. I'll watch them. They're on Thursday night.
Yep.
Obviously, they're a pretty good team. It's odd that they lost to that Pitt. I don't know how that happened, how they lost to Pitt.
They turned it over a bunch.
Yeah, so that might legitimately be a really good team. I don't know enough. I think we'll know more after Thursday. We'll get a better look at them. But obviously you got to be a little concerned about that. I don't think there's any doubt at this point you're playing Louisville. They'd have to lose both ACC games, I think, to open it up for somebody else. So it looks like it's FSU Louisville, and it's good for FSU. Again, if they win out, there's no scenario where FSU beats them and they're not in. You're not going to beat a top 7-8 team,
Right,
and be undefeated conference champion and not get in. So you got. I guess FSU fans, they really want to be careful. They got to be Louisville fans the next few weeks.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm sorry, do you guys care where Florida State is ranked? I mean, I just want to be in the top 4. I don't care 1, 2, 3, or 4.
I'm pretty much the same way. There's none of those 3 teams look to me like a whole different head and shoulders where you don't want to be matched up with that team. I mean, I guess Georgia theoretically, just because of what they've been the last 2 years, but yeah, there's no team in that top 4 that I would be like, oh, you don't want to be paired with them. And then yes, New Orleans would be great. I'd be happy with New Orleans. We know Corey would be happy with New Orleans because he could drive, but Pasadena doesn't suck. So I'd be fine with that too.
It does for the fans. You hear all the people, they don't like going to that stadium. Kind of the fan experience is not the best.
I get it, but man, I don't think it's the end of the world. I didn't like, and I guess it depends on who you play. Like, I wouldn't want to go out there and have to play Washington
out there again. You're playing a road game. Right. I don't want
that.
So,
that I wouldn't like. Yeah.
Selfishly, I think the fans. I think it's FSU's obviously been in New Orleans several times. I think it's a little easier for the logistically for the team, for the fans.
Sure.
So I mean, selfishly, I'd like to see that happen. In terms of who they would play, I don't know. I guess I'd like to play the criminals. Take him out before he goes on the NFL and Michigan's all the sanctions. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Alleged. These are allegations.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't I say that, Aslan? Did I say alleged?
Maybe you mumbled it.
Okay.
All right, again, folks. So the top 4 has stayed the same. Let's look. Don't mute me, darn it! Don't mute any of us. We're here to talk, everybody. Ohio State again beat Rutgers last week. Their quality wins. Notre Dame and Penn State. They were 9th and 7th, but Notre Dame has dropped to 20th. Penn State, I think, 11th or 10th. Georgia's remaining schedule, though, very impressive. They got their first ranked win of the season last week against Missouri between the hedges. Michigan, meanwhile, as you see there, no wins against any ranked teams, but that could probably change here coming soon. Number 11, Penn State, that was last week's ranking, and then number 1, Ohio State. Florida State, meanwhile, you all know, 24-7 win over Pitt. Their key wins over LSU, 45-24. Was it 45-24? I put that in without even researching it. I just thought that was like right off the dome. But they beat LSU. They also beat Duke, remaining schedule, Miami, North Alabama, and Florida. Ultimately, seems like all these schedules will probably be pretty evenly weighted. When the dust settles, maybe Georgia would have the strongest case because they're ranked opponents. They're getting towards the end of their season, so maybe they end up being number 1, then you're number 4, and then at that point, you are probably in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. So those are the resumes of the teams in front of Florida State. Florida State, though, still controls their destiny, obviously. Just has to keep winning to make it to the playoff. Looking at those future schedules, again, I mean, it seems like Florida State, ultimately, their schedule will still probably hang tough with everybody that's kind of even in front of them right now at this point. I don't think it will be this doomsday scenario where people will be able to manipulate the resumes to make it seem like Florida State hasn't done enough to be in the playoff if they win out, basically.
First of all, real quick on that graphic, Aslan, I liked when you first started talking, when you thought you're muted, you kind of had like the low pitched DJ voice.
Yeah,
I thought with the music in the, I felt like you were when they talk over the music for a while, I was digging that vibe, man. You should see if we can do that in the future. I don't know. I when you look at these remaining schedules, I mean, I think on paper, Michigan's probably got the toughest remaining schedule of the teams ahead of them. Because they have Penn State and Ohio State. But we don't know if Penn State looks good every time they're playing anybody other than Michigan or Ohio State. Yeah. So I don't know if that's I'm just trying to figure out who could get beat. And I really don't know. I mean, Ohio State Michigan game is a huge game. But other than that, I don't know. I don't really see any losses.
Gene mentioned it. Whoever the Big Ten champ plays, the Big Ten East champ plays, Wisconsin or Iowa, like they're going to have the worst showcase game of championship Saturday. Florida State will be playing Louisville, we think. Georgia, Alabama is a collision course. I think when it's all said and done, Georgia they control their destiny to get to that number one spot. I think if Michigan were to beat Ohio State, I think even if Ohio State holds serve and stays at number one, beats Michigan in the big house, I still think that last championship weekend, playing a team like Iowa, probably, Gene, and then seeing Georgia beat up on Alabama after they're coming off wins against Ole Miss, Tennessee, probably puts them at number one. And, Florida State might find themselves at 4 still if Washington jumps them because they've had so many ranked wins here in the end of November that, you end up in New Orleans, which is a win.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that happening. Again, it's just human nature. I think that what you see most recently becomes most relevant to you, which is why, they forgot about LSU at the time and some of these other games for FSU. So, yeah, I think absolutely it's going to be, like you said, especially all the buzz Alabama's getting. It seems like Alabama's playing as good as anybody now. If you're the defending national championships and you beat them, you beat Saban, a rising Saban team,
Right.
You pull that off, boy, they're going to have all the buzz in the world where, going out against Iowa and that offensive juggernaut, if you end up playing them in the Big Ten championship, I mean, does anybody watch that game? So, yeah, I think that'll help in terms of that. But again, it's hard for me to imagine. We've never seen this era where we've had like all these teams go undefeated.
Yeah.
It's like never happened before. So I still have a hard time, but there's not going to be an upset. But you look at those remaining things, you go, maybe Michigan loses to Penn State or something. It's maybe that'll happen. But other than that, man, I don't know. This Alabama trip against Ole Miss, I know, Aslan, you said you didn't think they matched up very well.
Yeah, Georgia's got Ole Miss. But, they got to go to Knoxville. And, I mean, Joe Milton hasn't looked great, but they could maybe pull the rabbit out the hat and make Georgia run around the field for 60 minutes and earn it, and they can maybe sneak past them. So
I definitely would feel better if one or two of these other teams lose, just because I do worry that I'm not convinced Louisville is going to get to the ACC championship game. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to Miami. And
I still think they're good, though, Ira. I think they'd
have to lose twice, Ira, right?
Yeah,
they'd have to lose twice
Thursday as well.
Yeah, they're playing. So they got Virginia. First of all, they're playing Virginia at home Thursday. They're not losing to Virginia at home.
Probably not
Thursday night. So
Miami,
I think 2 losses with Miami. I think they're.
But if they win Thursday, they're definitely in.
I think.
There's a bunch of 2-loss teams.
I'm pulling up the standings right now.
Yeah. Let's look at that. I just assumed they were in.
When I looked the other day, there's a bunch of 2-loss teams.
Yeah, Georgia Tech and North Carolina lurking.
But who have they played? Haven't they played? First of all, Georgia Tech's not going. They're going to lose again. Carolina, did they play Carolina and be?
Georgia Tech's they've got to play at Clemson. Yeah, they got Clemson this weekend in Death Valley, and then they got Syracuse.
So they're probably not going to be there.
North Carolina has Duke at Clemson at NC State remaining. And then again, as Gina's pointed out, Louisville's got Virginia this week, Thursday in Cardinal Stadium. Then they got to go at Miami. They finish their season against Kentucky. That's obviously an SEC team, so that doesn't have a lot of bearing on.
So I guess Carolina would be the one, but I don't know what the Okay, so I guess I didn't realize that. So I guess Carolina would be the one that might be a possibility, but I don't know what that tiebreaker would be.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying. You'd like it to be Louisville, and I don't, and again, like you were saying, I think Louisville's a decent team. I think they're a good team, but I don't think it would be great if you could play them as a number 8 nationally, but they're not probably one of the a major threat.
You see the last 2 games, Ira. I mean, they pummeled Duke and Virginia Tech the last 2 weeks.
I do think no, you're right. I do think the crowd would be awesome for Florida State if they played Louisville. I mean, I think Charlotte would be.
Yeah.
I think it would be a huge FSU crowd if they're not playing a team from Carolina.
Yep.
All right.
I don't think we'd want to play just hypothetically. I think you'd rather play Louisville than North Carolina, right, Ira? Because that might be the one team that could keep up in a shootout with Florida State. You get a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I was kind of ambiguous, or I guess ambivalent's the right word, about who they played. But no, Jeff and Corey convinced me that last week on headlines that you just don't want to play a great quarterback, and May is ostensibly a great quarterback, so that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe Boston College sneaks in there.
How about that? I don't know. I don't want to see Castellanos again. That guy gave me headaches.
So, Aslan, you pay more attention to Louisville or some of these other teams than I do. So Scott Satterfield leaving was just a great thing for them, because they wouldn't be here if he had stayed, right?
Oh, clearly no. And Cincinnati fans already want to get rid of him. Which he somehow landed that job, which in some circles might be seen as like an upgrade over Louisville.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Louisville's in love. I mean, he went to high
He's
school in Louisville, born and raised in Louisville, played football there. So he's a good coach. Thankfully, there's not a week off between the final week of the season and that championship game because he's got a really ridiculous record, I think, coming off of a bye week. But you don't have to worry about that because he's going to play you right as soon as he turns around and plays an emotional, probably physical game against Kentucky.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Florida State, that'll be their 9th straight game in Charlotte. So, that could be a little tricky for them. But again, just win. Just win. Control you can control. All right, on the way out, any last thoughts, Gene? Again, the poll has held steady here. It's still Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. Ohio State has a manageable game this week. Michigan's got Penn State. Georgia's got Ole Miss at home. Florida State obviously has Miami. Any sort of thoughts here as we look and turn the page past this second reveal?
I said it last week, and I'm not quite as confident, but I'm going to say it again. Something wacky is going to happen the next few weeks here. Somebody's going to get upset. Something's going to throw it off because you don't have this many undefeated teams. It just has never happened. This may be the aberration and maybe the one time, but I think somebody's going to lose out of left field. It's going to throw all the stuff out of whack. It's going to get a team like Alabama and some of these one-loss teams are going to get right back in the thick of things.
So Ole Miss is at Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, man, that's not. Yeah, I'm not
good.
I thought maybe
Georgia's got to go to Knoxville following week though, so who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the other thing looked pretty good. Any final thoughts from you, Ira? Again, as things have held serve here, Florida State number 4 in the college football playoff poll.
No, if I had to pick one of those teams that I might, if there is something crazy that happens, because I agree with Gene, just historically something happens. Like everybody doesn't cruise in. You hope it doesn't involve the team we're playing. I think. Man, at some point, one day Penn State's going to win a big game. Maybe they knock off Michigan. So that's if I had to pick one crazy development, I picked that before I picked Georgia losing to Tennessee. I just don't have any faith in Tennessee.
Hey, I mean, maybe the Big Ten refs might be able to make this easy for everybody involved if Michigan goes ahead and loses now, right? So,
Right.
But they're a 5-point favorite in Happy Valley for whatever that's worth, everybody. So take that for what it is worth. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. We really appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up on the way out. Subscribe to warchant.com. If you don't know, now you do know. The big game special, again, 50% off your first year. If you're a first-time subscriber, no promo code needed. Just go over to warchant.com, hit that neon green banner, sign up, and save 50% off an annual membership. We got plenty of stuff going on over at warchant.com. Jeff Cameron Show coming up 1 to 3 o'clock on your Wednesday afternoon. We'll have Wake Up Warchant there for you as well. And then Thursday live show, Corey and myself, Michael Langston making a cameo too to talk about recruiting. Big recruiting weekend. All that over at warchant.com. For Gene Williams, the founder and administrator of warchant.com and managing editor Ira Schofel, I'm Aslan Hajavani. Thanks so much for watching the warchant.com College Football Reveal.